Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. Qatar is always in the news. Have you noticed? They're very upset. They're in the United States. They're on this network and other networks complaining about their sovereignty being violated because the Israelis tried to take out the leadership of Hamas, you see. And so they intend to get back at Israel. They hope to enlist the Trump administration and the UN and everybody else because you don't attack a sovereign country. Of course, we've attacked a sovereign country called Pakistan, even an ally, because the Pakistani military was protecting bin Laden. And we sent our special forces in and we killed them. And then we left, violated their sovereignty. It's very funny, this little country, Qatar, worried about sovereignty. You know, they're violating our sovereignty every damn day. Now, I know they've been called an ally by Democrats and Republicans and administrations of both parties. They're no ally. They're no damn ally. And they still have to answer for 9/11. 9/11, 3 days ago, we just acknowledged the 24th anniversary of the slaughter of nearly 3,000 American citizens in New York City, at the Pentagon, in central Pennsylvania, read their names. Politicians turned out. But one of the countries behind 9/11 was Qatar. They've never been held to account, but there's plenty of information about them. Qatar. Let me explain to you, including from our friends at MEMRI, MEMRI.org. They're not the only ones. Go on the internet. It's all over the place. All over the place. It should be emphasized, they write, that while 15 of 19 perpetrators were Saudis acting as individual members of Al-Qaeda, 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM, was, in the period prior to the attacks, an employee of the state of Qatar and enjoyed the safe haven that it granted him. During his time as an employee of the Qatari Ministry of Electricity and Water was a ruse. They were funding him. They were paying him. He engaged in terrorist activities such as attempts to assassinate Pope John Paul II during his visit to Manila and an attempt to down civilian airliners over the Pacific. And he was under the patronage of Qatari Minister of Awqaf, that is Islamic Endowments, Abdallah bin Khalid Al Thani of the Qatari, the ruling family. The rescinded U.S. plea bargain with 9/11 mastermind KSM and his responsibility for the attacks revealed some information. The U.S.'s plea bargain with the alleged 9/11 mastermind would have prevented the full exposure of Qatar's role and responsibilities in the attack. The plea bargain, which was rescinded by the U.S. Secretary of Defense at the time because people objected to any plea bargain for this mass murder, Lloyd Austin, brought to light new and old documents about KSM's role in terrorist attacks against the United States and other countries while working as an employee of the state of Qatar. The documents also reveal that Qatar facilitated KSM's activities and his escape from arrest by the FBI. Really? Oh, yes. When the FBI came to Doha in 1996 to arrest KSM, and this is in his confession, the only ones reportedly to be informed of this in confidentiality was the Qatari emir and the palace. Within hours, that is, of being informed, KSM had disappeared. See page 91 of the 9/11 Commission report and KSM's escape from Qatar. KSM's escape from Qatar was also reviewed by Richard Clarke, counterterrorism advisor to President Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush, in his 2004 book, Against All Enemies Inside America's War on Terror, pages 152 to 53. In that book, Clarke wrote that a report had stated that KSM learned about the U.S. plan to capture him. Quote, "We were, of course, outraged at Qatari security and assumed the leak came from within the palace." One report, Clarke said, contended that KSM had, quote, "fled the country on a passport provided by the Qatari Ministry of Awqaf, that is Islamic Endowments." The government ministry was headed by that same guy, Abdullah bin Khalid Al Thani, a member of the Qatari ruling family. The story was told in much the same way by Richard Miniter's 2011 book, Mastermind, The Many Faces of the 9/11 Architect, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, minister of Awqaf. Abdallah bin Khalid Al Thani had agreed to give KSM, I'm quoting, a no-show job at the Ministry of Electricity and Water and a government-sponsored apartment. Until 1996, this Qatari apartment and salary would be KSM's safe haven and his lifeline as he traveled the world. Doing what? Committing acts of terrorism. Minotor writes, quote, by October 1995, KSM was seemingly cornered. The CIA and the FBI tracked KSM to an apartment building in Qatar. With a valid extradition order, the FBI agents raced over to his apartment. It was empty. How had he gotten away? Qatar's Minister of Religious Affairs, the same guy I keep mentioning, had tipped off KSM and provided him a traveling companion with false passports, according to Robert Baer, a former CIA official. Baer, who at the time was a CIA case officer working in the region, said that Hamid bin Jassim bin Hamad, a disgruntled member of the Kingdom of Qatar's ruling family, had told him about the arrangement. Baer had also, according to Minotor, told Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal Southeast Asia bureau chief, remember, he was decapitated by al-Qaeda, that from 1992 to 96, KSM had a no-show job with the government of Qatar, and that government had hampered American efforts to arrest KSM there in 1996. I seem to recall KSM had a role in the decapitation of Pearl. The 2012 book, The Hunt for KSM, Inside the Pursuit and Takedown of the Real 9/11 Mastermind by Terry McDermott and Josh Meyer, provides further details. It says that this minister of Auqaf, the same guy, that is, of the ruling family, had arranged for a job for KSM as a project engineer in the Ministry of Electricity and Water. How much he worked at the job is uncertain, but what is clear is that he hadn't quit the fight. He established a small fundraising operation there, recruiting men throughout the Gulf to seek out individual donors who are often found among the older, wealthier men at local mosques. According to McDermott and Meyer, quote, it is hard to hide in a place like Doha, one of the world's smallest capitals. Security officials there were aware of Mohammed's activities and allowed him to continue. We knew he was sort of in possession of money and sending it somewhere, a U.S. official said. The authors go on to state that according to the 9/11 Commission, most, if not all, of KSM's travels and activities during this time appear to have been related to his interests in carrying out terrorist operations. Some of this was actually funded by the minister Abdullah bin Khalid Al Thani of the Qatari royal family. Wow, what an ally. The New York Times, back on March 8, 2003, James Risen and David Johnston. I read in part, the United States actually came tantalizingly close to catching Mr. Mohammed. They go on. An investigation into the long manhunt for Mr. Mohammed, KSM, based on interviews with officials in Washington and the Persian Gulf, reveals evidence that as the Federal Bureau of Investigation closed in on him in early 1996, top government officials in Qatar, now an important American ally in military action against Iraq, this is from 2003, tipped him off and enabled him to escape. Today, many American officials believe that when KSM eluded their grasp in Qatar, they missed their best opportunity to prevent the September 11 strikes on New York and Washington. Not a single news outlet, to my knowledge, mentioned Qatar last week on the 24th anniversary or KSM's role, the mastermind. Not one. Why is this? Why is this? Now, Qatar and Hamas. Gee willikers, why did the Israelis decide they were going to take out the leadership of Hamas in Doha, Qatar? What the hell were they doing in Qatar? Well, to listen to the foreign minister with Brian Kilmeade, we asked Qatar to get the leadership of Hamas so we could negotiate a hostage deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the leadership of Hamas has been in Qatar and Turkey, but Qatar long before October 7th. They're billionaires, they're fat and happy, they're given protection. And the Israelis, after they were attacked again in Jerusalem, a bus filled with citizens, 6 murdered, 21 injured, said enough is enough. Let me ask you a question. If the Qataris had Hamas leaders who ordered an attack on an American bus in Washington with our National Guard there to keep crime down and killed 6 of our people and 21 of our people, would we be saying, oh, well, Qatar's sovereign, so we're not going to go into Qatar and get the leadership of Hamas? Is that insanity? Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this question. After we were hit on 9/11, did we say, well, don't go after al-Qaeda, they're in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, what, is a nation? It's got its borders, therefore we shouldn't attack there. Let's stop playing games. Hamas is operated out of Qatar. The leadership, much of it, is in Qatar. Qatar's been funding Hamas for decades. Qatar's Al Jazeera celebrates October 7th. Al Jazeera is the most widely read piece of garbage in the Muslim and Arab world. It is run by the ruling family in Qatar. Now, I'm not playing any games about this stuff. It's obvious why the Israelis went into Doha to take these guys out. What, they're supposed to say, we can't touch them because they're in Qatar? Let's go on. I want you to watch this short film about Qatar and Hamas.
Somewhere, amid the pristine streets and all the skyscrapers, Doha has an open secret. Qatar's capital city, 1,800 kilometers away from Gaza, a comfortable home for the leadership of Hamas. That's the group's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, personally labeled by the U.S. a specially designated global terrorist. But living in Qatar, he greets allies like the Iranian foreign minister in full view of the cameras. For years, he and other senior Hamas leaders have been holed up in Doha. And now, more than ever, that deal has come into question. Since the October 7th massacre, Qatar has positioned itself as an intermediary, helping to free Israeli hostages. But this story starts much earlier. In 2012, the Hamas leader Haniyeh and Qatar's then ruler stood hand in hand. The group, already designated a terrorist organization by the US and Canada, was welcomed and set up its political office in Doha. But plenty changed when Hamas militants stormed into Israel and took 1,400 lives. At the United Nations, Israel's foreign minister Eli Cohen berated the Qataris, demanding diplomats pile pressure on the Gulf autocracy.
Qatar, which financed and harbor of Hamas leaders, could influence and enable the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages.
Qatar purportedly exerts influence over Hamas by helping to fund the civil service in Gaza. This is not new. We found a transcript from 2014 when U.S. Congress called Qatar perhaps the largest financial patron of Hamas. Which leads us back to this.
The way the Qataris pull this off is by whitewashing their role in supporting Islamic extremism, by supporting businesses and investing vast sums of hydrocarbon wealth across places in London and the United States and elsewhere.
Mark Wallace served as a U.S. envoy to the United Nations under George W. Bush. He now leads the nonprofit Counter-Extremism Project. They're demanding a boycott of Qatar's luxury properties abroad, like London's famous Ritz Hotel, sold in 2020 for more than $1 billion to the brother-in-law of Qatar's ruler.
What are the chances they are not going to be financially and personally and as a government liable in part for these terror attacks? The perpetrators of these acts are hiding in plain sight, not even hiding, hosted in plain sight in luxury.
Hamas isn't leaving yet, with senior leaders comfortable a world away from Gaza, under global scrutiny more than before.
That's the Canadian Broadcasting Company. But let me go on in the limited time I have. What else is this great country of Qatar, which has about 350,000 people? Most of the people who actually do the work there are people who brought in from Qatar, many of whom are indentured servants. They get in and they can't get out. Let's take a look. And these things are all over the place for anybody to see, any diplomat to see. Here we have the Jerusalem Post. unveiling Qatar's substantial financial influence in American universities, promoting extremism and leveraging its wealth, promoting calls for tighter regulations and oversight. An unprecedented wave of anti-Semitism has been rising in the United States, you may have noticed, including violent protests, tent encampments, harassment of Jews and Israeli students, and aggressive anti-Israel, anti-Jewish messages. Those who monitored Qatar's covert activity in the U.S. and its massive financial influx saw it as a natural continuation of promoting extremist agendas under the guise of supporting science and students. Wait, Qatar is spending money to destroy our colleges and universities? The river to the sea crowd? You better believe it. Billions. They have poured more billions into our colleges and universities than communist China, than any country on the face of the earth. Qatar had ideological goals primarily to promote the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, explained Dr. Charles Asher Small, CEO of the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism, and organization Vice Chairman David Harris in a New York Post report. According to Small and Harris, Qatar leveraged its immense resources wisely to enhance its image, such as hosting the FIFA World Cup, acquiring iconic sports teams in the West, establishing a global airline, broadcasting Al Jazeera, and integrating into higher education. It hired an army of lobbyists, lawyers, top-notch public relations experts in Washington and other capitals to promote the Qatari brand, penetrate decision-making circles, and intimidate anyone who might question its hidden motives. It goes on. In recent months, the Institute for the Study of Anti-Semitism published a series of studies and findings regarding Qatari funding in U.S. universities. They highlighted its use to influence the agenda through hundreds of joint research projects, extensive personal data collection on students, significant universities operating campuses in Doha, and more. The main research published in November 2023 revealed Qatar as the primary funder beyond the sea of American universities. Asher Small Harris called on the U.S. to rein in Qatar and so forth and so on. And they're not the only ones. Here we have the Counter-Extremism Project. What did they find? Qatar's support for extremists undermines regional and international security, provides direct financial and logistical support, their conclusions, to internationally designated terrorist groups, harbors sanctioned, designated, or wanted individuals, including former Hamas leaders. It goes on. What else? Invests in global financial institutions directly linked to entities that finance and support the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. Qatari government has lent support to al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, al-Nusra Front, and the Taliban, including through direct money loans, ransom payments, and supplies transfers. And they have a zillion footnotes to prove their point. Oh, one more. I could do a whole year on this. Over at the Free Press, April 28, 2025, foreign donors have given as much as to U.S. universities in the last 4 years, they mean the Biden years, as they did in the previous 40, according to a new report by the Network Contagion Research Institute that was shared with the Free Press. The study shows an explosion in overseas funding for American schools between 2021 and 2024, nearly $29 billion in foreign money donated during that period. Qatar and China are among the largest sources of funding. That $29 billion figure is more than double the total for the preceding 4 years, and they say it's an understatement because a lot of these countries are not even reporting how much they're giving to our universities. Qatar is the largest source of foreign donations to U.S. universities since reporting began in 1986, with $6.3 billion coming from the gas-rich Gulf state. Qatari donations have ramped up significantly over the last 4 years. Nearly a third of donations from Qatar, over $2 billion, were given between 2021 and 2024. So let me finish this opening statement with the following. Qatar, release the Hamas leaders to the United States for prosecution for war crimes. Release them now. Otherwise, your sovereignty means crap. Number two, we need to limit its ability to purchase businesses and politicians in our country and to pour its poison money into our universities and colleges to undermine our country and our ally, Israel, and spread anti-Semitism. Number three, it must stop funding Hamas. Number 4, it must come clean on 9/11. Confess.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.